Friends, I move further on Tata's stories as part of the playlist Take It From Me. I move to chapter 1, which is titled Dear Swami Vivekanand Part 1. As you would recall, this book has been authored by Harish Bhatt, who is brand custodian at Tata Sons. I start. On 14 July 1893 at 3:40 p.m., the ocean liner SS Empress of India set sail from the Japanese port of Yokohama. It was on its voyage to Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada. This was a graceful ship, painted white with two buff-colored funnels banded with black paint at the top and sporting three tall masts. The ship could accommodate 770 passengers, 120 in first class, 50 in second class, and 600 in steerage. On this ship were two passengers who would, in their respective ways, shape the future of India. Walk back into history with me, cross the deck of the ship and meet Swami Vivekanand, at that time a relatively unknown young monk. He was traveling to America and wished to speak at the World Parliament of Religions in Chicago, scheduled for September that year. Over the past 5 years, he had led the life of a parivrajak, a wandering monk. In 1892, upon meditation on a rock at Kanyakumari, he had a vision of one India, of organizing monks for the progress and upliftment of the nation. He was now traveling to America to deliver his message at one of the greatest global gatherings of all religions representing India and Hinduism. Also on board the ship was Jamshetji Tata, a well-known merchant of Mumbai and founder of the Tata Group. He had been to Japan for discussions on shipping, and during this visit he had also seen with admiration the commendable progress made by Japan in several areas including industry and sericulture. Now he too, like the Swamiji, was on his way to Chicago to visit the World Columbian Exposition, where advancements in various areas including science and technology were being showcased. This great fair was being held in 1893 to celebrate the 400th anniversary of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the New World. Indeed, like Christopher Columbus, Swami Vivekananda and Jamshetji Tata were both avid explorers themselves. Both were curious men and both were constantly thinking, fervently restless about the future of their nation. It was destiny, perhaps, that they got talking to each other on board the ship. This was a sea voyage of nearly 12 days, and there was plenty of time for conversation and reflection. Unfortunately, we do not have any first-hand details of the conversation between these two legendary men. How interesting and revealing it would have been to listen to them and catch a glimpse of their thoughts about India and its future. Jamshetji Tata was greatly impressed with Vivekanand and is known to have later told Sister Nivedita, one of Swamiji's best-known disciples, that when Swami was in Japan, everyone was struck by his likeness to Buddha. From some secondary sources, Swamiji is reported to have inquired of Jamshetji why he imported Japanese matches into India. He then pleaded with the industrialists to instead set up a match factory in India to create employment and preserve national wealth. It's quite possible, though we have no evidence of this, that Jamshetji spoke about his own plans for India's industrialization, including early Tata ventures such as Empress Mills in Nagpur, which had already made a deep impact by then. I think that Jamshetji may also have outlined quite passionately the details of the scheme he had established just a year ago in 1892 to send a few chosen Indian students to England for higher education. He had created an endowment fund specially for this purpose, and he was very proud of his scholars. A research paper which has examined details of this voyage says it is likely that Swamiji spoke to Jamshetji Tata about his various plans, including the ones for organizing monks for industrial purposes to ensure the advancement of the country. This thought must have inspired Jamshetji Tata. He had already been thinking about higher education in industrial and technical areas to impart self-reliance to future generations of Indians. Indeed, this conversation with Swamiji must have stayed on in Jamshetji Tata's mind, because 5 years later, in 1898, when he was ready with his ambitious plans for the establishment of the Indian Institute of Science, he wrote to Swami Vivekananda. Here is the letter he wrote. 23rd November 1898, Esplanade House, Bombay. Dear Swami Vivekananda, I trust you remember me as a fellow traveler on your voyage from Japan to Chicago. I very much recall at this moment your views on the growth of the ascetic spirit in India and the duty not of destroying but of diverting it into useful channels. I recall these ideas in connection with my scheme of a research institute of science for India, of which you have doubtless heard or read. It seems to me that no better use can be made of ascetic spirit than the establishment of monasteries or residential halls for men dominated by this spirit, where they should live with ordinary decency and devote their lives to the cultivation of sciences, natural and humanistic. I am of the opinion that if such a crusade in favor of an asceticism of this kind were undertaken by a competent leader, it would greatly help asceticism, science, and the good name of our common country. And I know not who would make a more fitting general of such a campaign than Vivekananda. Do you think you would care to apply yourself to the mission of galvanizing into life our ancient traditions in this respect? Perhaps you had better begin with a fiery pamphlet rousing our people in this matter. I should cheerfully defray all the expenses of publication. With kind regards, I am, dear Swami, yours faithfully, Jamshetji and Tata. In the meanwhile, the ship SS Empress of India reached its destination in Vancouver on 25th July 1893 after a splendid voyage. If we could look back into time, we would have seen both these great men disembark from it at this bustling seaport in British Columbia. They would soon head back towards Chicago, carrying great dreams and aspirations for the nation they lived with all their heart. Thank you. Stay with us. We would continue in this podcast with other interesting tales in Tata stories that has been brought out by Harish Bhatt.